welcome back to another new edition of Windows in Current Affairs. And today we talk about the October War victory and all that is related to that particular phase in our lives through cinema and through cinematography and dramatic pieces of work that we still remember until this very moment when we remember October War victory. And after 47 years until now, we're still rejoicing the memories. We still remember all the movies that were done, and even the celebrities who starred in these movies. We remember them. We're going to be taking a flashback into those movies and the memories that are revived every year when we commemorate the October War victory through cinema. We're very delighted to be having with us Dr. Mariam Waheed. She's a professor of political science, and she's going to share with us these beautiful memories. Good evening, Dr. Waheed.
Good evening, Mrs. Zina.
Let us talk about the cinema in general. How far has it succeeded in documenting all the highlights or the brightful moments in our life?
Actually, cinema is a very important tool that it actually reflects people's emotions, people's ambitions, and it can reflect our daily lives. It also serves as a documentation of a lot of events, so as the 6th of October War. And also it is, it's like magic. It's something that reflects all the, what people actually believe in, and also their, maybe it can also try to showcase people's emotions that are not expressed in other media, as newspapers, as television, as other media. And also regarding politics in general, specifically that cinema and politics are interrelated, and a lot of political moments, a lot of political events were documented and reflected in cinema by the different filmmakers who were highlighting their stance about political events, trying to reflect people also through film. And cinema is like magic, as I said at the beginning, that it is very, the silver screen reflects a lot that cannot be reflected in other media.
Of course, the silver screen reflected a lot, even have documented the moments all over the years. Let's take in particular, for example, the October War victory and this saga, this epic in general. It has been documented here, it has been documented worldwide, but the way the cinema documented it is amazing. Beautiful pieces of work, especially that time during in the 70s and 1973 in particular. Cinema was flourishing, and there were, great directors, script writers, great actors, and the type and standards of this industry was at its peak. So talk to us about the pieces of work that documented the October War victory, and how far have it reflected the spirit at that time?
Actually, the 6th of October wars belong to a specific genre in films, which are the war films. So war films are films that reflect the warfare, the different events that take place, the effect of war on society, how the relation between the army and the people, and all over the world there are a lot of war films. Internationally, for example, there's Apocalypse Now, there's Armageddon, there's Enemy at the Gates. So it reflects the idea of nationhood, it reflects the idea of victory, and also glory, nationhood, what's the nation, what's nationalism, and that all this was reflected in the 6th of October films. And those films didn't emanate and start from the 1973 victory. There were films prior to that. There were films like in 1972, we have أغنية على الممر, or A Song on the Passage. So this was a movie documenting the war of attrition after the defeat in 1967. So this defeat in 1967 affected a lot the Egyptian society, affected a lot the Egyptian army, and the soldiers had this will that they won't be defeated, because this is a deep belief in the Egyptian army that we can't be defeated. So this sense was reflected heavily in 1972 with this movie about soldiers singing and trying to get out of this sense of defeat and calling for war or calling for a change in the country, because this defeat affected a lot the Egyptian people. And even Egyptian people criticized some soldiers somehow after 1967 that you have to fight, so you can't. It was all of a sudden the defeat in 1967, but this patriotism, heroism in the Egyptian army was deeply reflected in the movies getting ready for war of 1973. After 1973, a series of movies were produced as العمر لحظة, which is Life in a Second. That was later, like for several years after the war. But there were specific films directly after the war, as The Bullet Is Still in My Pocket, and starring Mahmoud Yassin, of course, and our deepest condolences to his family and all the Egyptian people for his loss. So because he was an actor in a lot of those movies commemorating the war. And there are other movies as The Great Devotion, as Budur. All those movies reflected a lot about the 6th of October war, mentioning, for example, some ideas related to the relationship between the society and the soldiers going to war. So because all the soldiers or the commanders, when they left their wives, they left their loved ones. So this sense that of sacrifice, because they sacrificed their lives, their daily lives, because they have to go to war. They have a sense of duty, and here comes the idea of the struggle between duty and love or emotion, because you have a duty for the country, you have further love rather than the love for your loved ones only.
Great, but let's remember together the best pieces of work. You have talked about late actor Mahmoud Yassin and how he reflected that particular phase, and he has starred different movies that talked about the October War victory and the complexities in society that were taken at that time before the October War victory and after it. And he had that image of that Egyptian young man who was at the same time as a family man and at the same time performing his duty, or I mean answering the call of duty. One of his movies also, let's remember his movies, not only one movie, but let's take a look over his movies that documented the October War victory. Where would you like to start?
Maybe The Bullet Is Still in My Pocket.
Of course, the most popular one.
Yes, the most popular, and because the story was written by Hussein Abd al-Quddus before the war, and after the war they said that this is the best to document the war directly after the war. So he further changed a little bit in it, adding the war, adding a lot of the scenes were shot on site, so in the war itself, so because it was still the places were there after the 1973 and 1974. So he reflected a lot about the Egyptian people, about the Egyptian soldier, maybe also his skin color, his looks reflect a lot about Egyptian people, so that's why maybe it's he was very close to the people, and also his voice, so he reflected a lot. He had charisma, and also he reflected. In the bullet is still in my pocket. He reflected the idea of a peasant who left his village, his hometown, in order to go for kinds of war, and later on he came back to his village and found out his fiancée to be attacked by someone in the village, and trying to so this was the idea that he has to take revenge from him. And this revenge, as if the land was taken as his fiancée was attacked, so as if Sinai was taken as his fiancée is a metaphor in this regard. So he has to take revenge and take revenge.
The director of the movie who was
and I guess Hussein Mustafa and
but then the technique was totally different. I mean, that the pace of time, and you know, camera movements, and everything was totally different. It was done intact, and with cautiousness and professionality. A little bit different, maybe because the time is different also. But still at the same time, it is still valid until this very moment, and it could compete with other movies that could be done just this year. You could even surpass those movies. How do you justify this?
I guess that because they were based on novels written by, like, L'Umr Lahza, or Life in a Moment or in a Second. It's about based on movies by Yusuf Sibai, based like The Bullet is Still in My Pocket, based on Hussein Abdul Quddus novel. So it's based on novels and stories, deep stories. Even though the Life in a Moment is very important, it's very different because it reflects the idea of a woman also. So this starring Magda, and Magda here is a journalist who leaves her husband because he is a bit corrupt, and she wants to go to meet the soldiers, to meet up and hear their stories. She acts as a nurse, and then afterwards she goes on the front lines to meet the soldiers and lives the daily lives of the soldiers, singing together Simsimiyya and on this Porsaid instrument. So she lives with them, their daily lives, and
as a journalist
engages with them. And the importance of such movies is that another thing related to your earlier question is that movies can also make citizens engage in the war. So till now, when we see, we haven't lived at the time of the war. So it's the only just a few things. We have the books, but movies helps you to engage emotionally and by reason. So it plays both roles. So you can feel how soldiers. Their emotions, their patriotism, and also another thing is the trauma after war. So there's a movie called حتى آخر العمر, or Till the End of Life, reflects also the idea of a commander who gets injured and gets back to his wife, and his life as a whole changes as a result of a trauma of war. So how trauma affects soldiers and commanders is very important.
A lot of American movies were talking about the trauma of war, especially the Vietnam War. They have their own types of wars also, Vietnam War and other wars. But each of them, I mean, each industry reflected the trauma in a different way.
Yes.
How did the Egyptian cinema reflect the trauma of war? Through what?
It reflected the trauma of war, but it also all the time tried to, for example, the passage.
The new, the series, the TV series.
Yes, the most recent one, talking about the war of attrition and the trauma that the commander he faced a lot during as a result of the 1967 defeat, but he turned this loss into victory. So this this period of time when you suffer from.
You're talking about the passage, the old one.
No, the new, not the song on the passage. The passage, Al Mamar, the new one directed by Sharif Arif.
Yes.
Starring Ahmed Az, and you can see also from the poster of the movie how much he is like a hero. So from the starring Ahmed Az, and you will notice in the posters of movies that there's no one, just one actor in the poster. Like you will notice that they are all in a group, because it's one destiny in the army. It's one of the things taught in the army, that we are as if we are all in one ship, or like if you see the poster of The Bullet Is Still in My Pocket, you will find out all the soldiers in one boat. So it's in the 1973 war, of course. And then in the passage also it reflects the war of attrition, which is a very important war, because it was a war where there was determination. We didn't have a lot of equipment. We suffered even in 1967. We didn't have a lot of weaponry. We didn't have a lot of soldiers, because a lot of infantry were sent to Yemen before, in the early 1962 and 1963. So we suffered a lot. We didn't have that much equipment, but we had the will. So we didn't have maybe this army was built a lot since 1967 with the help of the Russians, and so this was the Russian experts and a lot of determination by President Sadat and President Nasser in the late 60s, and since 1970 with Sadat. So this was a great will of the leaders and the army at that time in order to gain back our land, because it's not accepted by the Egyptian people and the Egyptian army to take part of the Egyptian land.
Exactly. Also the music,
yes.
The composition of the music and the lyrics, it was such an unforgettable time. It will never be repeated again. I mean, no Balik Hamdi is going to come over again. Even Balik Hamdi, Pink Floyd even asked his assistants when Roger Waters was doing an album, and there is a certain segment inside one of the songs all composed by Balik Hamdi. And I mean, Balik Hamdi was almost like the Beatles for England. There were other composers also, people who wrote the lyrics, the vocal cords, also the singers, like Warda, like Abdul Halim Hafiz. I mean, special songs that you remember now that really, really would bring you right to that moment back again. How do you describe that particular phase for when it comes to music?
Of course, Abdul Halim Hafiz was one of the best who sang for the October victory, and there were a number of songs as Aish al-Lail, Allahu Akbar. So those are very important songs that reflected the 6th of October war, and they were produced at the time of the war. So they didn't just wait for a lot of time to get composed, like few hours after the war, with the war. So it's just because people felt this, and they just wanted to reflect directly with the war what they believed and what they sensed. I would talk also about some of the movies which had important songs that affected us all, like العمر لحظة or Life in a Moment. And this, if you remember this song, أنا بحبك يا بلادي, or I love my country, and trying to pinpoint the massacre of البحر البقر that took place in the school and by the Israeli army, and this was documented in the movie. So we all remember this song. Also we all remember in حكايات الغريب, the song غني سمسمية, or saying غني, reflecting also the songs that appear at the time of on the front lines, how soldiers sing, how soldiers express what they believe in. And also because songs reflect a lot, and songs can get you out of a bad mood also, singing and dancing. So this is very crucial in the army, trying to get out of, because it's a hard life. It's a life full of, it can be with extreme violence, but I can say that from an analytical point of view, or from a critical point of view, that Egyptian movies don't have much violence in war films, because internationally you can find a lot of movies that have a lot of violence and brutal scenes because in war films. But in Egyptian movies, producers and filmmakers didn't want to reflect violence, because actually the war that we engaged in was a war in order to have peace, to have security, to regain our land. So it's not something related to the Egyptian nature and the Egyptian spirit of the sense of violence or the sense of countering others, or so it's just an idea of just war in order to have peace, as Sadat reflected the idea of he was a man or a hero of war and peace.
Right. Also, when we talk about the movies that document crucial times and very important times in our lives, we cannot forget the technique of directors.
Yes.
Because even abroad, even in the United States and Hollywood, there were certain directors that were remembered to be documenting, and they even got Oscars. We have the same directors here, I mean similar directors that have the same technique, that were very much popular. Do you think this generation of directors will be repeated again? Or the time is different?
You mean in the 1970s?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, but those who did those documentaries and all those movies,
yes.
Regardless of the October War, there were directors. There
yes,
was Barakat, there was Kamal al-Sheikh,
there was also
Hussam
الدين مصطفى,
Hussam al-Din Mustafa,
Ali Abdel Khalek,
Ali Abdel Khalek, there was Hassan Imam, and there were big names. It's true that there are qualified directors for every time, but that particular technique and the situations and you know, the special master scenes in every movie, that is not really available nowadays. Nowadays, you go to see a movie, you like the movie, but you can't remember a master scene. As long as you get out of the movie theater, you forget all about the movie. But 47 years after those movies, and we as Egyptians remember the master scenes of every movie of those. How do you justify that?
Yes, that's correct. I agree with you about the idea of the master scenes, the idea that a lot of this, films right now, you can just remove some scenes in the movie and it doesn't affect how you see the movie. So if in a good movie you have to have continuity, there has to be continuity of scenes, that it's there's the master scene, and this was there in the 1970s. There was a movement also by youth which was the new cinema movement أو جماعة السينما الجديدة. So this new cinema movement, new cinema wave, were youth like Ali Abdel Khalid. They were youth who worked together, script writers and directors who worked together. We need this now. We need to encourage youth more. We need to encourage, just build a new generation of filmmakers. A lot of them actually have good, have talents, have good, they're educated well, but cinema as a production, it needs a lot of money. So this differentiates us from just books, because as a writer you can just write a book. You will have have some resources, but cinema production is very it costs a lot. And the movie, The Passage, cost a lot of money, and it gained. There were a lot of revenues from this movie because it was a very good movie, and even the people used to clap in the theater and trying to because they felt that this reflected a lot, and a lot of people from different generations, kids, old people, and youth watched the movie and interacted with it. It was also shown a lot in clubs, so people gathered, and they felt that it reflects a lot about the war. So we don't have a lot of those movies. It costs a lot, so it has to be. There has to be more support towards those kind of movies.
What are the challenges that are posing? The challenges that are posed before cinema right now, cinematography in general. Are there tangible challenges that we need to overcome to bring back the golden times?
The important thing is script writing.
Of course.
Yes. So
it's the foundation of the whole piece.
It's the foundation of this, and this needs strong intellectuals and support of good writing. And you just not support any. You have to look a lot to discover, to work together in like some workshops. There are some cinema workshops of youth working together. There should be more support of big directors. For example, just to mention Dr. Ali Badr Khan, for example, or a lot of like big names who created a lot of important movies, and they can support the young people, and they could get chances in order to create movies. And there's still a point regarding the movies in the 70s, some of them, and the El Mamar, that most of the scenes of the operations of the battles are unfortunately still from foreign directors or foreign cinematographers or directors of photography. So they are just participated in the scenes of battles. Maybe we still miss this technique, but this is from a technical point of view. I'm not an expert in, I'm not maybe a cinema expert more can talk about this, but this is from what I read. And politically, of course, there's a political will to support cinema, to support political cinema, because not just the idea of we don't have this idea of just a propaganda movie, but we need but what's there, and the political will is not a propaganda movie, but a movie that reflects the people's spirits, the people's need to change. It can reflect also the relationship between the army and the people, and trying to make the younger generation regain the memories of the 1973 war, regain the memories of previous political events where there was a deep sense of nationhood and nationalism.
And revive the national pride.
Yes.
Amongst the youngsters.
Yes.
In their souls back again. Do you think the current movies, like for example, there was the TV series in Ramadan, Al-Ikhtiyar, or The Choice, and it was booming. It was very impressive, and it documented a saga that was similar to the October War, although that it was just a 1 day or 2 days saga, but it was very impressive, very touching, and it was taken in a very professional way. How do you assess it?
It was a very strong series. It was very famous and popular. A lot of like university students, young people, children even interacted well with this series, and they just wanted to be like this, like Mansi. So they just wrote and drew that they want to be as Al-Mansi. So they wanted to be part of the army. And it reflected a lot about this champion who sacrificed. He didn't care about anything except the country. He was a family man. He was supporting. He was very close to his family. He was a hero, and he also supported his friends, supported his relatives, even. If he finds in several scenes in the series, if he finds anybody in trouble, he tries to support him. Also, this series does not reflect Al-Mansi as such only, but reflects a lot of the soldiers and commanders who we lost in the war against terrorism.
Right, but also, do you think that characters like Al-Mansi, that because there are millions and millions of Mansi inside the Egyptian army,
yes,
with all the respect to a hero like Al-Mansi, but during the October War there were other Mansis also, but maybe because there wasn't social media and there wasn't, you know, the websites and technology wasn't that much, and you know, transferring the piece of information was a little bit way behind what we are in now. Do you think that's why characters wasn't, you can't, I mean, the reflection of characters and heroes in the October War, like in reality, wasn't as popular as now? Looked imaginary?
In cinema, I guess no specific characters were it was more of a symbol, like
it was imaginary and written in the script.
Yes, but it's not a documentation of a real life. Unlike series, we have, of course, we have Sadat. We have Sadat days, but this is documenting the Sadat's life. But as for soldiers, we have some movies like Tariq ila Ilat or The Road to Ilat. So this about the destruction of Ilat, and this is documenting real people. So we still have, we don't have much, and at the end of the movie we have a photo of the different soldiers and commanders who participated in this, the destruction of Ilat.
Maybe that's what made difference between movies here and Hollywood movies, because ever since the 60s or 70s, and Hollywood movies used to document and revive the real stories and biographies of heroes in the army. In Vietnam War, in other wars, in Civil War and everything, there was a character that was personified inside the piece of work, and it was a real character, like many movies we remember. That did not happen in the Egyptian cinema.
If you count also the number of movies, there's still very few. Very few, and a lot of them were produced directly after the war in 1974. So you can find also a specific, like it can be just a love story, and you'll find some scenes of the war.
Right, but can I get in here?
Yes.
I can remind you of a movie that was done prior, years back to 1973, Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi by
Yes.
the late director Yusuf Shaheen. And it personified real characters, talked about history and talked about Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, his companions and his enemies, and all with their names and relating their stories. So how come that stopped? I mean, that was possible even before the 1973 war. He talked about real characters, something that really happened.
We have few like Sadat days, Tariq ila Ilat. We have just few real events. Because, as I said in the beginning, some of the movies produced directly after the war were based on novels. Some of them were written before the war, like The Bullet is Still in My Pocket, and just changed a little bit to reflect some of the incidents that took place. There's some, but still we have very few movies.
Few find them.
Yes.
But is it because that things were not done after the war? They didn't have enough time to do it at their best, but still they got out at their best, and they were very professional. But they were done in haste, and they were done real quick because they wanted to document the momentum. But probably if it was 2 years after the war, things would have been different with the same pieces of work.
And also because society changed a lot after the 1973 war. And then we had, with the 1974 October paper, the changes in the society, the change towards peace, and then the change with the Egyptian-Israeli peace treaty in 1979. So those changes also affected the number of movies that documented the war.
Well, I guess Dr. Mariam Waheed, you're a professor of political science. Would like to thank you so much for remembering with us the saga of the October War and how cinema reflected it and documented it. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And I guess this would bring us to the end of this edition of Windows and Current Affairs. Many thanks to all of you. Until we see you once again next week, that's a goodbye.